Delete laws. What's going on, brother?
Hey, Chris, how are you, buddy? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
Cool.
What is up, man? How are you doing?
I'm okay. It, I'm not sure what you told your audience. I just jumped on. I was doing other stuff and I didn't get to see what you said before, but I just got out of jail a month ago and I was in jail for 4 months, 113 days, so a week less than 4 months. And it took me a really long time to get back on track. They decimated my social media. It took 2 years to build up to where I was crescendoing, getting to the very top of my game, where I was getting 40 million views every month, 50,000 people subscribing a month. And now I'm at 14 million views a month with 15,000 people subscribing a month. Took my revenue 65% down across the board. I have a business where I sell these trifolds, and it teaches people how to invoke their Fifth Amendment right. That you pull this down from your visor, and then you immediately invoke your Fifth Amendment right. You get it on delete laws, but this business is down 85% because I'm not getting the traction, because you have to stay in the algorithm. You know how that is.
Oh, yeah.
You work for Instagram, you work for YouTube, you work for Facebook. That's your employer. And if you don't punch in every day consistently at a certain time, then they just, but it took 2 years of building, consistently live streaming, consistently posting shorts, consistently doing these things. So I'm emotionally getting, a little better, but whether I like it or not, when you get locked in a dungeon for months on end, it fucks you up, dude.
I know.
It's really, really a horrible, archaic, evil system. So part of the whole system of being in jail is that they bring in guards every 12 hours, guard shifts, and then 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Well, my sleep cycle alone is so screwed up. I still am not on track at all. I'm trying, but the way I guided my sleep cycle in the dungeon is the two guards would work 4 days, and then two different guards would work 3 days. And the next week, those guards would switch. And these two guards would work 3 days, and the other two guards would work 4 days, 12, 12, 12, 12. So pretty simple, right? So you have four guys coming in over each week, 3 and 4 days apiece. My sleep would be determined on which guard was the bigger prick. And I would try to stay awake long enough so I could sleep through most of his shift. And then I would then wake up and try to study the Supreme Court, presidents, states, constitutional law, First Amendment rights. I mean, I haven't got to show it yet but pretty much I had a 4-month intensive on learning the Supreme Court, who was appointed. I read the biography of every single Supreme Court justice, every one of them. Every single one of them. There's like 116, 117, something like that. I read the presidents. I read the biography of every single U.S. president. So, I'm a walking encyclopedia right now. And that's the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to teach the history of the Supreme Court and why they should be elected and why there should be term limits on them, why they should be accountable to the people. Because throughout the history of time, the Supreme, I hate to get off track
Do it, buddy. Do it. Just take it for a ride.
Okay. So a lot of people, I'm what you call a classical liberal, meaning that I definitely have, my liberal point of view is I may not agree with a single word you say, but I'll die for the right for you to be able to say it. That's a classical liberal perspective. I'm a classical liberal where my gun is right here. I'm not going to show a gun on air. My gun's right here. I can reach over and grab my gun right here. You break into my house, there's a good chance something will happen to you. So a classical liberal was the fine line between what you would call today's conservative and what used to be a liberal. So now to me, because of my conservative roots, being raised in a very conservative small town in Alaska, I was raised being a classical liberal. Now, a lot of people will say to me, Chille, why are you always saying how racist our country is? Well, let me explain it to you. Let me explain it. So, because a lot of people don't really understand, they think, oh, slavery was abolished in 1865. Okay. The laws that are created in America were created for Black people. Literally created. The laws were created. And you say, oh, slavery ended in 1865. No, it didn't. we've been a racist country, sadly, our government, institutionally racist country, since the very inception. Since the very before, when we were 13 colonies, we were a racist country. You know that. We had a bunch of slaves and stuff. And then inside of the dungeon, I read a book called Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Ooh.
If you haven't read Uncle Tom's Cabin, you're not ready. You're not ready. You're not ready for what you will read. And you are, I swear to Christ, you are not ready. So I'm sorry, but so what happens is the 13 colonies are formed and the North Atlantic slave trade is happening and people are coming into the port of South Carolina. And so now what happens is pretty soon, over 10, 20, 30, 40 years, the Black people who had been enslaved by their own people, for the conservatives out there, we know the Black people in Africa sold their own people. It's true.
Yeah.
Now, when you go through Portugal, and so now we have these Black people here, and we have them in slavery, and then what happens is, pretty soon, the next generation of kid that's born. So let's go back to 1600, 1638, 1640, 1650. So we're skipping any kind of controversy. We all agree that the slave trade is in massive. It's going 1650. It is rolling. We're bringing in slaves. Okay. Well, by 1675, the slave you brought in, he had a kid with another slave woman, and then that kid is born. So now you're now 1700. Let's go to 1700. By 1700, the kid who's raised there, now he's 25 years old. 1650, his dad's here. 1625, he's born. 1675. By 1700, he's a full-grown adult, 25-year-old man. Okay. The 25-year-old man, the slave that was born into slavery here, now, though, he's totally functioning. He knows how much it costs to buy the grain. He knows how much it costs to sell it. He's not stupid. The farmer who owned him taught him, here's how you harvest the corn. Here's how much corn we plant. Here's how much corn we sell. Well, pretty soon, the Black folks, the slaves here in 1700, so from 1700 to 1800, the Black slaves here from 17 to 1800, they are fully functioning regular people like you and me. The only difference is they have no rights and they're owned by somebody. Okay. So now 100 years. So if we go 1650, let's start with the Delaware colony who created the torture cuffs that they still use today to put on people. 1638 until 1865, right? That is just massive slavery. It's crazy. It's insane. It's like, oh my God, you're putting people in chains and make them and plow the fields. And the ironic part is that human beings, we're the most gracious. We are the most inclusive human beings. When you really look what COVID did, you got to be locked to your house. Everybody agreed. Everybody stayed locked in their house. Like, I don't know if that would happen. I think it would happen again because people are willing to acquiesce to other people. So the slavery in our country, a lot of people don't understand that slaves didn't know how to fight. They didn't know how to fight. So when John Brown had this idea, he would attack Harper's Ferry and then the slaves would join him in fighting. They didn't know how to fight. They had no idea how to fight. How do you fight? What do you mean? I don't even know, unless their owner trained them. So 1865, slavery is abolished. So we got from 1640, the Delaware colony creates the slave cuffs, then to 1865, 1740, 1840. So that's 200 years. That's just roughly 215, 225 years of just outright laws created. The very first police called law enforcement are the 1704 South Carolina slave catchers. So the first term law enforcement comes from people enforcing slavery contracts. So now we're all the way up to 1865, and now we've abolished slavery. All right. Kind of.
Kind of.
So then from 1865 to 1896, you have Plessy versus Ferguson. Plessy versus Ferguson is going to create legal racial segregation called the separate but equal doctrine, meaning that Blacks would have a water fountain and whites would have a water fountain, and they're going to be separate but equal, which, that wasn't true. Hospitals would be segregated. Restaurants would be segregated. Everything would be segregated, but it would be separate but equal. Well, that wasn't entirely true. So a lot of people who never heard slavery was abolished in 1865 continued to be slaves for decades longer. Them and their children all through the South. There was no internet. They'd come to the gate and say, hey, slavery's been abolished. And the owner would say, no, it hasn't. Get out of here. Right? So this is the truth. So now 1896, separate but equal happens. Then, of course, separate but equal means you're really just a slave again because you can't come into town. You'll work for whatever contract we give you. A series of Supreme Court cases that I won't go into will continue to make it so you have peonage contracts where you don't have any rights at all. If you even 1883 Pace versus Alabama makes it illegal for you to have an interracial relationship. 1884, 160 white people are lynched. After 1883, Pace versus Alabama said that you can't have a relationship with a white person. Well, there was like 58 blacks lynched in 1884, but there was 160 whites lynched in 1884 because they were punishing white people for being in relationships with black people. Okay,
Jesus
so
Christ.
this is Pace versus Alabama, 1883. Pace versus Alabama isn't overturned until guess which year? Go ahead, Chris. Which year do you think Pace versus Alabama that criminalized interracial marriage? What year in America do you think that was overturned?
Shit, I would guess too late, but I'd say like way too soon, like way too close to now, like 1930 or something, right?
Keep going.
1940?
Keep going.
1961.
Keep going.
Are you serious?
Yes,
19
1967, Loving
Oh
versus
my
Virginia.
God.
3 years after the Civil Rights Act. So now people say to me who are conservatives that follow me and believe in me, I carry a gun, I'm all for your First Amendment, your Second Amendment, your Fourth Amendment, your Fifth Amendment, your Eighth Amendment. Like I'm this constitutional knowledge guy where if you're a conservative, you really align with me. And then you say, Chille, man, why do you say these things are racist? Okay. So let me explain. So allow me to explain.
I do like the fact that you're like man without a country as far as political ideology, that you're
I
in
don't
between
have
all the
one. I don't have
I
one.
know.
I will
Yeah.
not vote for dumpster fire and I will not vote for the cop Kamala. I will not
All
vote.
right.
I would rather vote for Trump over Kamala, though. If someone put a
Yeah.
gun to my head and said you have to vote for Trump or Kamala, I'd vote for Trump. And why
Hilarious.
is
Yeah.
that? Why is that? Because Trump wants to indemnify all police and hold them harmless so we can't sue them. Well, what he'll do when he gets in office, if he gets in, is he will then do everything he can to protect police. That will create an indentured left that will then more actively film police, more actively show how police should not be indemnified. It'll create an entrenched group of people who, just because Trump wants to indemnify police, they will then actively work against police. It'll become a political football, which we have to get rid of law enforcement in America because we're moving into a surveillance state.
Oh yeah.
You can't have a surveillance state plus law enforcement. That doesn't work because there's so many laws in our country. Neil Gorsuch's book called Overruled, I just read it. It just came out 2 weeks ago. I read the book already. Okay. In Neil Gorsuch, Supreme Court Justice of America, he says that we have too many laws in this country. So you can't have a surveillance state plus a state based on law enforcing. You can have a surveillance state plus a rights protecting state. But if you have a law enforcement state plus a surveillance state, it equals a carceral state, a prison state, a jail state. And that's what we're heading into. So I'm sorry if I get off track a little bit, but now
Go ahead.
let me try to get back to it. So
Go ahead.
1883. So now 1954 is Brown versus Board of Education. Brown versus Board of Education overturns the 1896 holding of Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal. So they in Brown versus Board of Education, they say we're no longer going to have segregated schools. We're going to desegregate our country. No more segregated hospitals, no more segregated restaurants. So that's 1954. But guess what? The American police refused to enforce segregation. As a matter of fact, there's a 1968 Supreme Court case that Hugo Black wrote the holding on where he was overruled, where he was in the minority, where he could not get states to desegregate. States didn't desegregate in America until 1964. So the laws that were created throughout the history of time in our country were created because most people go into court for criminality were Black people. So we created an entire country of laws based on Black people. So how long were Black people enslaved in America? From about 1638, 1640, all the way till 1964. The laws in our country were based and created around slavery because you had that nasty Missouri Compromise. And by the way, people talk about the 1820 Missouri Compromise that created. So there's a line that went right across the middle of continental America, even though we didn't even have all the states in place. We saw a bunch of territories. But that 1820 line of the Missouri Compromise made it so that there was slavery in the South, but above that Missouri Compromise line that went from east to west, this was free states up here. Well, so then in 1857, in a case called Dred Scott versus Sanford versus Dred Scott. The Dred Scott case, I can't remember if it's Sanford or Ferguson, but anyway, the point is, in the Dred Scott case of 1857, they go to the Supreme Court. Roger Taney, who's been on the Supreme Court, he's going to be on the Supreme Court for 34 years. He's been on the Supreme Court for 2 decades already. A bunch of other justices on the Supreme Court have been on the court for decades. So right when the country is ready to, we're you know what, the country's tearing itself apart. We want to abolish slavery. The old Supreme Court justices, they come in and say, no, you're property. You can't even be here. The 1820 Compromise is unconstitutional because in the Constitution, it says you can have slaves and they only count as 3/5, called the 3/5 Compromise in the Constitution. So maybe you've heard of that. Well, that has real relevance when you get to the 1857 Dred Scott case. So what happens when you have all these old Supreme Court justices who their time has passed? We get sick of a US president, no matter if it's Reagan or Trump or Bush, whoever it is. After 8 years in America, people are ready to get rid of that guy. Obama, you got to go, bro. Bring in somebody new. But yet Supreme Court justices sit on the court for decades and decades and decades. And how do they get there? They're anointed. They're appointed. Yeah. They're appointed. So we've had this institutionally racist because individual people, when you talk to them, my conservative brothers and sisters, they are not racist. They're just not. They're not deplorable. They're not racist. They just don't see the same America that the left sees, which is perfectly fine. Yeah. But my conservative brothers and sisters must understand that Terry versus Ohio, overturned Terry, on my t-shirt, on the back of it, is all about John Terry, his Fourth Amendment being violated in 1963. And then in 1968 at the Supreme Court, after John Terry's Fourth Amendment right is violated, then we came up with cops have to have officer safety. They have to have officer safety. Why is that? Well, we freed blacks. Blacks can now walk around downtown. John Terry was milling around downtown Cleveland, looking around. He looked like this because he was literally mentally ill. When he got out of prison, he spent the rest of his life in an insane asylum. John Terry was cuckoo, but he was walking around, looking around downtown Cleveland. You didn't walk around Euclid Avenue, downtown Cleveland, when you were black in 1963. Blacks weren't even officially free. That happened in 1964. So we've created this country that is based on institutional racism laws, not the individual people. Individual people, when you get 4 out of 5 individual people, they're not racist. 1 out of 5 is a racist piece of shit, and I can't stand you, right? But 4 out of 5 of us are not. Simply, we're not. We come from 2 different cultures, blacks and whites, Mexicans and blacks, blacks and Mexicans and white people. We come from different cultures. Asian people come from different cultures. So we created this melting pot here. Okay, so why am I saying all this? I'm telling you all this because the same reason that I was locked up in a jail, the same reason a law had been created. The law that had been created had been on the books for over 100 years, obstruction. So then you trace back the history of obstruction. Where does that come from? You can't have black people milling around getting involved in police activities. So we're kind of living in this perpetual racist legal system that is now being applied to white people, and there's no color marker on that law. It doesn't say this law was just created for black people. It's not supposed to be applied to white people. The 1911 Sullivan Act in New York City, written by Governor Tim Sullivan, made it so that you had to get your gun permit from the president of the police bureau. The cops had to approve of you getting a gun in 1911. Why is that? Well, because black people were moving to New York. As soon as they realized, remember 1883 Pace versus Alabama, you have a series of lynchings from 1883 until 1930, 1940. That is it's incredible. You know how many people are being lynched, where they're keeping little pieces of their skin and taking to school and, hey, this is the Negro that we lynched the other day. And the kids are celebrating it, right? So we've created this country that is based on fear of the police. Fear of the police. And that's where we are today, even further. They're called peace officers. They go to peace officer standards and training school, but yet then they wear a slave catcher badge. Why aren't they wearing a peace symbol? Why are their uniforms black and blue? Why aren't they white and yellow? Why are they hiding on the side of the road to get us instead of going to calls where people's rights have been violated? And that's the whole point. That's the entire point. We've created a system of law enforcement, not rights protecting, not peace officers. So So if you hear me talk about institutionally racist laws in our country, it's because from 1638 Delaware colony all the way up until 1964, we created laws just for Black people. That's 300 years. That's 300 years. More. 1640, 1740, 1840, 1940, all the way up to 1968. So 328 years of laws being created just for Blacks. Just for Blacks.
Yeah.
Now, if you're white and you're a conservative like I am, then you say to yourself, holy shit, I'm being arrested for a law created for Black people. You got to get out of your car in the name of officer safety. Pennsylvania versus Mims, 1977. Pennsylvania versus Mims. Mims is Harry Mims. Who's Harry Mims? He's a Black guy. So when your case goes to the Supreme Court and they make a ruling on your case, it applies to everybody. You have to get out of the car in the name of officer safety. What is that brought up on? Pennsylvania versus Mims. Harry Mims. You follow me? 1997. Maryland versus Wilson. Maryland versus Wilson makes it so that the passenger has to get out of the car in the name of officer safety. Well, Maryland versus Wilson, who's Wilson? Michael Wilson is a Black guy. 1968, John Terry, Terry versus Ohio. Cops, what are the 4 tenets of Terry versus Ohio? Number 1, officer safety over all of your rights. Officer safety is premium. Number 1, forget everything else. Number 2, Terry versus Ohio creates reasonable articulable suspicion. No such thing as reasonable articulable suspicion until Blacks are freed. You understand why I'm teaching you the history of our country? We never had a need for reasonable articulable suspicion until Black people were freed. And now you have this magical reasonable articulable suspicion. So first tenet, officer safety. Number 2, reasonable articulable suspicion. Number 3, cops can run up and grab you and pat you down. So it used to be with the back of their hands on the front of the trousers. What is it today? POW style of arrest. Get on your knees, hands on your head, lay on your belly. And that's the culture that's created from Terry versus Ohio, little pat down. Now, what's number 4? Detainment. Detainment used to mean you have to stay right here. Don't leave this area. You're being detained. We patted down the front of your trousers, and now we know you don't have a weapon, so now you got to stay right here. This is 1969, 1970. 2024, now it's put them in torture cuffs, put them in the back of the car where there's a cage. Now you're strapped into the back of a cage. Well, who was that created for? It was created for Black people. What are the extensions of Terry versus Ohio? Pennsylvania versus Mims, you have to get out of the car in the name of officer safety, an extension of Terry. Maryland versus Wilson, you have to get out of the car if you're the passenger in the name of officer safety. So how far do those 4 tenets of Terry versus Ohio actually go? Reasonable articulable suspicion is now the standard. It used to be probable cause supported by oath or affirmation. The 4th Amendment is the right of the people to be free of unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. And no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause. No warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation of the victim. So in other words, in 1791, 1800, when the Bill of Rights was created, if I'm going to file a grievance against you, I go down to the police bureau and I say, this guy came into my house, he smacked my dog, hit my wife, ate my porridge, and stole my pan. Okay? I am the victim, supported by oath or affirmation of the victim. Terry versus Ohio says the cop swears he was reasonably suspicious of you. And why was that created? Just for Blacks. It wasn't created for white people. So for my conservative brothers and sisters watching this, they're like, yeah, he is right. It wasn't created for us at all, right?
Yeah.
So now we're living in this system. We live in a Terry versus Ohio system, and we're living in Richard Nixon's America. People say this is Trump's America, this is Biden's, no, it's not. Our entire country is based on Richard Nixon's 1971 declaration of the war on drugs, on the war on people. And so this is Richard Nixon's America. Richard Nixon was a criminal piece of, right? He was a total piece of racist, misogynist, piece of fucking, right? Okay.
Piece of shit. Say it. I mean, go ahead.
I'm trying to be more electable because I am going to run for governor and I am going to win because this system cannot stand.
My dude. I like to see people doing stuff. That's for sure. I mean, and the fact that you know, we don't always look. There's ideologies that maybe we disagree on some stuff, but I have so
Tons,
much,
Chris. I watch your stuff. I
bro.
disagree with a lot of stuff you say.
Right, but we know when it's time to get together and say
Right.
this is important, and this is,
Yeah.
and when you say my conservative brothers and sisters, I've been doing a lot of shows with communists in the last few weeks. Communists, great people, fine,
Yeah.
whatever. We're all humans. We're all brothers and sisters. We need to get together. We have a common enemy. Don't forget it.
We do. And so just so you know, I did a lot of studying in jail, bro. So
Tell me about it.
so the entire push of anti-communism, anti-socialism stems back to World War One, where World War II, we have financed. So let me just give you two different wars so you can kind of understand what the U.S. government has done. So the US government created a financing program after World War II that would pay different and supply arms and even troops for different countries around the world that were leaning towards socialism or communism. And so if you don't know what socialism or communism is, it's where the government controls the means of production. So you may have heard recently that Kamala Harris was saying we're going to put price controls on food. You know, that's a communistic principle that the government will determine how much a farmer can sell his corn for, and then that creates the where the government's controlling the goods of the country. Well, if you can't get corn, those are the goods. You know, if you can't get applesauce, if you can't get beef, if the government's controlling the price of that, then that's based on a communistic principle. It's just a simple fact. You can read Karl Marx's book. So anyway, so now let me explain it to you. So here's what happens. After World War II, we decide that we're going to finance anybody who will support democracy over communism. So a good example of that is the Korean War that starts in 1950. The Korean War is where we have North and South Korea. Well, the United States government did that. We interjected our troops, our planes, our bombs, everything, so that pretty soon North Korea and South Korea said, hey, let's call a ceasefire because everybody's getting killed, and we'll have a North Korean state and a South Korean state. And that's what they did. We know it now by North Korea and South Korea. Well, we tried to do the same thing in Vietnam. Vietnam was having this great big fight of we want to be a democracy, we want to be a socialist, we want to be a communistic system. So what did we do? We thought, hey, we'll do the same thing. You know, we'll send our troops in, and then they're going to have to give up, and then it'll split the country in half. You'll have a North Korea, North Vietnam, and a South Vietnam. And Saigon was the capital of the democratic Vietnam. Well, when Saigon fell, that was the end of the mission. When the North Koreans when the North Vietnamese beat the South Vietnamese and they took over Saigon, war's over. And then at that point, Richard Nixon had to pull us out of the war because we lost. We lost. But we financed and lost 60,000 men over in Vietnam to try to make sure that communism couldn't spread, right? So
we
then
really we didn't like that communism stuff. We had to get rid of it. Yeah.
they still don't. Maybe you've heard of Debs versus United States, DEBBS versus United States. Eugene Debs was a socialistic leader. You can pull the case up. You look up oyez.org, oyez.org. So put Oyez plus Debs versus United States. And Oyez has a little brief on it. Oyez is a really good source. It comes out of Cornell University if you want to learn Supreme Court case law. So we failed miserably at that. Now, after that, we kind of got out of that business. We were there for a little while. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of the Bay of Pigs. Everybody's heard the term the Bay of Pigs in Cuba, but they don't really know what it is. So what the Bay of Pigs is when Cuba, which there's so much information here. Just research the Lopez expedition, Lopez, Lopez expedition, if you want to learn about Cuba and how Cuba was at one time our ally. We were protecting Cuba and they became a communist country. So how'd that happen? Well, John F. Kennedy decided to send over 1,400 CIA agents and launch an offensive on the country of Cuba to try to turn the tide of communism. Well, those CIA guys got their asses kicked. 100 of them died. 1,200 or 1,100 of them got arrested, put in the Cuban prison. They were in a Cuban prison for a year before Kennedy made a deal. He gave $55 million for these 1,100, 1,200 CIA agents. So it was, again, another attempt to try to curb communism, socialism. If your audience is truly liberal and socialistic and communistic and they
Yeah.
want to
Left.
know left, if you want to understand what happened to the unions in this country, what happened to any sort of research Eugene Debs and what he did against what was called the Pullman Railroad, the Pullman Company, George Pullman. George Pullman was a guy who built these really illustrious travel trailers that would go on railroad carts. So you know how railroad carts, you got one that's coal, one that's got oil in it, and they got these tankers on the railroad. Well, what George Pullman did is he created these railroad cars that were like luxury. There'd be a chef in there, there'd be a bed, there'd be a guy to stoke the fire. It was like this really, and he made it really, really rich. So Eugene Debs challenged him. And then Eugene Debs got put in prison. And he got put in prison for years based on. So this is really crazy because the way we execute our. You guys are going to hate this. You're going to hate this. You're going to hate this. I'm just telling you, you heard me say, I'm not voting for Trump. If I had to vote for Trump over Kamala, I would vote for Trump over Kamala because she's evil. She's a nightmare. But here's the point. So Eugene Debs, he's a communist socialist leader in America. He runs for president. He loses. He runs for president. I believe it's going to be 1908, 1904. Where, so in case you don't know, Teddy Roosevelt wins the presidency in 1904, and then he's president from 1905 to 1909. Eugene Debs runs, he gets like 100,000 votes. 1908, Teddy Roosevelt again runs, but no, I'm sorry, William Howard Taft runs because Teddy Roosevelt takes off to Africa for a year, so he anoints William Howard Taft, who is a total piece of just. So William Howard Taft runs, and Eugene Debs runs against him, but this time he gets like 300, 400,000 votes. So like, holy smokes, he's really starting to rise a little bit here. Howard Taft wins. And then in 1912, a guy named Woodrow Wilson runs against William Howard Taft and Teddy Roosevelt. And just, you guys don't know this, the Republican Party in 1912 was the Progressive Party, extraordinarily progressive. And William Howard Taft betrayed Teddy Roosevelt's principles and made deals with conservatives. And William Howard Taft's such a piece of shit. The people he appointed to the Supreme Court, George Sutherland, Butler, that total piece of shit. But so now 1912 though, I want to stay on Eugene Debs here because I have ADHD and I can go a million miles an hour. Eugene Debs, he runs for president again in 1912, but this time he loses, but he gets almost 1 million votes. So you can see what's happening. 1904, 1908, 1912, 100,000, 300,000, 900,000 votes. So Eugene Debs, man, he's really starting to run. Well, that piece of shit, Woodrow Wilson, who should have lost. He was a conservative. He was a progressive Democrat for the Democrat era. But the true left progressives were Republicans. And Teddy Roosevelt ran against William Howard Taft. They got 7 million votes together, 7.5 million votes together versus William Howard Taft's 6 million votes. Because they canceled each other out, Woodrow Wilson became president. Well, then that piece of shit Wilson, he then passes the Sedition Act of 1917 and the Espionage Act of 1918.
Espionage Act, yeah. That's
okay. So what happens? They prosecute Eugene Debs. Dude. Because you're not allowed to lead a socialistic movement in America. They put him in prison. It goes to the Supreme Court, Debs versus United States. Supreme Court says you can't say that.
Jesus Christ.
They leave him in prison. So
as what we don't prosecute our political opponents. Yeah, we do. We do it just wonderfully.
I said you guys wouldn't like it. You wouldn't like it because when it happened to a socialist, it's bad. But when it happens to Trump, it's good. Trump. I'm not here to support Trump. I don't. No. He wants to indemnify all police.
Bro, consistency over everything else. Right.
Right.
I'm not an ideologue. I'm not here to make you feel good. when the facts say that you should. I have to argue with leftists all the time about this. There are gangs of Pakistanis in the UK that are sex trafficking young women. I know that's a conservative talking point, but it's actually true.
Oh, it's true. It's
Things can
really,
be true.
yeah. Same thing in Sweden.
Yeah.
The number one. You're gonna hate this. You ain't gonna like this.
Bring
You ain't.
some balance to the show, Chille. Come on.
Okay, I'll come back to the left here in a second. But the crimes, the sexual assault crimes against Swedish women over the past decade is the number one crime against women in Sweden.
Yeah.
And 9 out of 10 of those crimes are done by immigrants. And just so you guys know, I've read the Constitution. I've read the bill. Obviously, I tell you I'm a constitutional law scholar. I must have read something, right? So I'm way right on this. I am so far ready to seal our borders, get some legal citizenship. No, you couldn't call it citizenship, green card work for the 13, 14, 20 million people here, seal that border for a year or two. Let's get the people who are in here. Let's get them up to legal status because they were born here in California here. A bunch of kids were born here. Their parents brought them over when she was still pregnant. Now they're in 10th grade and they've never seen Mexico ever, never even been there because they're afraid to cross the border because they won't be able to get back in. And now you're going to deport that 10th grader, 12th grader person in college. We need to legalize the people here, seal the border for a little while. And this idea that we're going to just pull in immigrants and they're going to assimilate to our country, we're seeing around the world that that's just not true. It's just not true. So
it takes years. Let's say it takes at least 3 decades for people to really get, like in Germany, we had Turkish people come in the 1970s, and it took at least 3 decades for that to officially, assimilate. But in a lot of cases, the culture changes. I don't have a stake in that. Like I don't have a horse in the race, but it's true. It's true that there is a correlation between cultures that aren't really prepared to do what we like them to do, that end up becoming criminals by the merit of the state or whatever. But,
well, let me just say this: half of my team is Muslim. Half of my team that works with me day in and day out are Muslims.
Yeah,
more than half. I'm at 60% of my team right now because I've only got half a dozen people, and three out of them are Muslim.
Yeah.
So I don't have any problem with Muslim people.
And that's the thing is this thing. People will be quick to say racist, but if you're going with data, and you're going with crime rate, and you're going with real statistical fucking truth, then there's no reason to get all uppity. Everybody in the chat right now is like this. They're
I never like him. I never trusted him.
Bro, like, come on. I'm just telling the truth.
I'm not. You know what? When I get on with, I try just not even to read a chat. I try just to look right at you guys and have this honest conversation. Yeah. I don't even look at it. If people are upset with me, you guys can Google me. I've already been canceled. I was canceled in 2021, called a racist by this crazy chick in Utah from BLM, Utah. She was mad that I was the leader of civil rights on TikTok. And so, they created this facade that I was racist. Then this guy named the Dinesh guy, the Dinesh guy, Danesh. Okay. The Dinesh guy who does all the investigations on racists. I mean, he's got a really big channel. He's not a small channel. So I get a phone call one day, which I recorded. Yeah, I sure did. And it's the Dinesh guy on the phone. I know who you are. I've seen your TikToks. He goes, oh, yeah. He said, so how you doing? I said, I'm doing terrible. Tens of thousands of people are calling me a racist. What are you talking about? I'm doing absolutely awful. I said, how are you doing? He goes, well, I was just calling you to see if you said anything about me. I said, you're that Dinesh guy or Danish guy or however you say your name. That's who you are, right? He said, yeah. He said, yeah. I said, I've never mentioned your name. I've seen a few of your TikToks where you out racist, but I've never said anything about you because I don't know you. We've never had interaction. And then he goes, okay, I was just making sure you didn't say anything about me. And I go, you're the guy who does the investigation into racists, and thousands of people are saying I'm a racist. Yeah. This is on a recorded call. Yeah. And I say to him, so what'd you find out about me? Did you find someone in my past? Did you find an ex-lover? Did you find an ex-girlfriend who said Chille said the N-word all the time?
Gotta assassinate this guy's character somehow, I swear to God.
I said to the Dinesh guy, I said, did you find anything about me that you're going to report? And he said, no, I didn't. And I said, are you going to tell the people that you called, my friends, my family, every person I've ever known? Are you going to tell them that you've never found anything racist in my past? And he said, no.
Nope.
I hung up the phone.
Yeah. This is beyond. This is beyond. This is human beings.
Well, what it is when you get this thunder roll that someone's a racist, where there's thousands of people now jumping in, and they go to your Twitter and they're like, you're a racist, right? Well, you can't stop that. And the Dinesh guy, he didn't want to get in the middle of that. So I'm waiting for him to refute what I'm saying. That's why I haven't released the recording. I'm waiting for him to say that he didn't make that phone call, that we didn't have that conversation. I got it on my phone, bro.
Jesus Christ.
I got it on my. So it's funny because if you're ready to brand somebody a racist, you're not ready to unbrand them. If you find out that they're not a racist, and just so you know, I was raised in a very small town. My family was not racist at all. My aunt and uncle would never tolerate any kind of racism in their home. But on the playground of the oil workers and the commercial fishermen, right? Those young boys, I've been in hundreds of fistfights. Like, we fight each other. You want to settle this, boy? So you go outside and we'll have it out, right? On the playground, we use the N-word. My baseball coach, my little league coach, was the one that taught me that blacks and whites aren't supposed to marry and have kids.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, this was taught to me. And so you have these roughnecks. I'm from an industrial town where we either do oil, we do fishing, or we do tourism. Those are the three industries on the peninsula in Alaska that I'm from. So we said racist stuff on the playground. Oh man, it was the N-word, constantly regular. When I got to college, okay, you could always hack a black in my tiny little town. You could always hack a black. And other people would jump in with me like, yeah, F them N'ers, right?
Yeah.
When I went to college one time, and ironically, this is the most ironic thing ever, even though I'm listening to R. Kelly bump and grind, my best friend is a black guy, like literally my best buddy's black. And then I remember one time I said something that was kind of like sliding toward black people. It was racist what I said. It was just kind of off color racist, right? And I remember there was this learning curve that like hit me right in the fucking head, bro, where in your tiny little town in Alaska, where half of those roughnecks parents are racist, it's okay to say racist things. My freshman year of college, the very first time I said something off color, the entire room looked at me and was like, you're the asshole, bro. You're the, it was a way to gain acceptance. And you're 18 years old, you want to fit in, so you can always hack a black, and you were in like Flynn in the 90s. Well, I learned really quick in the 90s that apart from tiny ass little towns in the middle of nowhere, most people, they didn't really like the hack a black idea.
No, it's not popular anymore.
So the one thing I ever said when I was 18 years old as a freshman in college that was kind of off color about black people, I never said anything like that ever again.
Yeah, man. Dude, you know who did the same thing? Who everybody is revered now. He's a leftist hero, Woody Guthrie. He was the hero of his day. When he left home, he started parading around these racist songs, like when he first left Oklahoma. And after a while of going to enough like union busting things where people were getting massacred, and people were like, hey, you got to tone that shit down. That's not really, you're not making any friends with that. And he eventually did, because he understood that there was oppression going on all around.
For me as a person, I'm sorry, I'm just going to tell the truth, because when you tell the truth is you don't have to embellish anything. If you tell the God's honest truth, man, it is really riveting. So there was only 2 or 3 black kids in my hometown, and one of them was in my family that my grandma adopted. He was my age. He's literally my uncle, but he's 2 years younger than I am. So there's, out of the 3 black kids in my school, David was we called him cousin, but he was my uncle by actual, because my grandma adopted him. So that was one of the black kids. The other black kid in my hometown, a guy named Joel. You remember all the racist jokes? Why don't you hit a black guy on a bike? Because it could be your bike, right? So let me explain the irony of that. I stole Joel's bike. I stole his bike. I'm the Colombian. Me llamo Jose Maria de Castro. My friends call me Chille. I took the black guy's bike and stole it. Swear to Christ, I did it. But in my mind, I had been
Shame on you, Chille. Shame
No,
on you.
I was 13.
Yeah.
And my cousin Daniel had told me that we lived on a peninsula. So if you take somebody's bike, you're not really stealing it, you're joyriding it, because you can't get it off the peninsula because you got to pass a bottleneck, which is a lie.
It's only temporary. Yeah.
Right. But I'm 13, and Daniel told me that you're only joyriding, you're not stealing. So I saw a bike outside of my school. It was Joel's bike, one of the 3 black kids in my whole town. I steal his bike and I go riding it all the way home, and then I ditch it in an alleyway. Well, right when I ditch it in the alleyway, I'm walking home. I hear Joel behind me. Chille, you got my bike. I turn around and look at him. I say, man, I was only borrowing it. He goes, yeah. But Joel was a track star. He had chased me. He had seen me steal his bike. And he chased me from the school 2.2 miles to my house. He was running the whole time behind me, and I didn't know it. I never looked back. I was just pedaling on this little bike I'd stolen from a black dude. So just
fucking white people, man. I'm telling you.
Well, I'm Colombian. I'm just extraordinarily pale.
Okay.
So in Colombia, though, we have from pasty white to black people. So anyway, so if you Google me, though, to this day, you can Google me that I'm a racist, which is just.
Well, dude, I've been on this show for a while. I debated a few people. Guess what? I'm a pedophile, a federal agent, and a necrophiliac. So
yeah. So, I actually read about you that you're a pedophile.
Yeah, I'm a pedophile, a necrophiliac. What else am I? CIA, homophobe.
Right.
I'm also gay. I'm
a statist, and I'm gay. I'm a gay statist. Racist, gay statist. I had the pedophile thing too. They created a fake FBI dossier that I was a pedophile, which is not true. And
everybody's a pedophile these days. That's no big thing.
Oh, I'm also a felon.
Oh yeah.
I got a gun right here. I carry it everywhere I go. I don't know why I don't get arrested all the time. If I was a felon, I think a few of the cops don't like me. I think if I was a felon, Nevada, I'm pretty sure cops should show up just knowing that I openly carry a gun everywhere I go, and they would arrest me. You can't be a felon and carry a gun. So how does that happen if I'm a felon? So anyway, I didn't mean to get off too much. But I wanted to explain some things.
Yeah, no, it's good to get to clear that. But we both share the most important thing, and that is fuck him. Christopher Walken. He knows what's good. So before we get out of here, what happened? Like, obviously, you did some time, and the judge was out to get you. Can you tell me just a little bit about what the hell was going on there?
So, I film cops for a living. That's what I do. I'm a First Amendment auditor. I show up on the scene where the cops have pulled you over, or there's any police action at all. There's red and blue lights on, and I show up with my camera and I start filming. I have filmed cops in over 30 states, maybe more. Last I checked was 30. And in February of 2022, I was arrested by a cop named Brendan Bourke, a real knuckle dragger, low-level scumbag pig is just the best way to put it. He arrested me for filming him. It was on camera. And the big issue was whether or not if I took a step back or not when he told me to step back. It's on camera that I did. So then when I went to court, the video has been seen. It's been shared by so many different people. When I went to court that day, this troll channel called Our Nevada Judges, they covered the trial. Well, just so you guys know, and I've fallen on my sword several times for the mistakes I made in that trial. But what happened was in the very beginning of the trial, and I think that was March 17th, 2024, the judge had it out for me from the beginning. She didn't want to be on YouTube, but this guy, Our Nevada Judges, had gotten a press pass. So she thought that, so here's what happens. Before the trial begins, the bailiff is literally harassing me as I'm sitting on the pews in the benches. Okay. A guy called Don Andre Investigations. He did a 2-hour comprehensive, covered everything. If you guys haven't seen his video, it'll tell you the whole story of what happened to me. So the bailiff is trying to tell me before the trial begins that I can't have my knee up on the bench. I tell him to go fuck himself. You can, tell me the code, statute, or ordinance that I'm violating. And if I have to turn and face forward, then I will. But if there's no code, statute, or ordinance, I said, you can literally blow me, dude. Just get away from me. I can't remember the exact words I used, but they weren't kind because I don't like cops. So
fucking love you, bro. Fucking love you, man.
He goes back and talks to the judge for 5 minutes. What does he say to her? So then the judge comes out and starts the trial. Then she says, search Mr. De Castro. I said, this is a Fourth Amendment violation. My attorney at the time, he doesn't do a great job at all. And he doesn't object to this. The bailiff then comes up and starts skiffing me down, like violently, like pulling on my jacket, ripping my pockets out. I'm triggered because number one, I'm a wrestler. You don't just get to put your hands on me, bro. It's just, I might be 50 years old, but you know what? I still don't like any man just putting their mitts on me. So my blood's boiling. I'm pissed that this guy's got his hands all over me, taking my phones out of my pocket, right? I turn my phones off, and then the judge says, take his phones from him. And I said, no, you're not taking my phones. I don't want to give them to him anyway. And then so she goes, give the bailiff your phones. I said, no. I go over, I give them to the district attorney. The bailiff comes over, snatches the phone out of my hand, which is called snatching. It's assault. I say, you are a pig, dude. And then the judge says, what'd you say? I said, I called him a pig, right? Well, that's going to seal my fate right there. I have a bad day. I've fallen on my sword about this. I can't, to my family back in Alaska, to my supporters, to my friends, I've told everybody this. I'll say it again on your channel. Don't do that. The courtroom is a place to find justice, not to hurl insults. Maybe that guy was a pig, but it's not my place to say it in a court of law. Yeah. I realize I made a mistake.
Understandable.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to the people who I let down by taking those actions. I won't do it again. Now, the second thing is the judge has a bad day, because then the judge sits there and says to me, I'm going to find you in contempt of court. Well, what she should have done is she should have found me in contempt of court. And you go to jail for the day. And then she says, I'm biased now, pass this on to another judge. But she doesn't. Instead, she says, I'm going to let this go. And I say, well, I want my lawyer to be standby counsel. I want to represent myself and have him just help me. And she goes, I don't want you to try to delay this trial any further. Well, the trial had only been delayed because the only reason the trial had been delayed is because he wanted a family leave, which Brandon Bourke, your qualified immunity is gone, bro. You're fucked, dude. I can't wait for this federal lawsuit to finish. So then after that, my lawyer, so the judge has a bad day. Then she says that I'm trying to extend the trial, which I'm not. And then my lawyer has a bad day. He doesn't do a great job at all. Doesn't represent me well at all. So then the DA recommends that I get a suspended sentence and a $500 fine. And the judge goes, no, I'm going to put you in jail for 6 months, 3 months for resisting, 3 months for obstruction. They immediately take me to jail from the courtroom, which I had an appointment that afternoon. My dog is in my office. It transformed the way I think about people going to jail. Why in America with tracking devices? You mean you could literally put a tracking device on someone's wrist that locks on, just like one of those grocery store things where you have to have the little wand to take it off. And you can say, okay, you got to go to jail, put this on you. You got 48 hours, be back here. Why can't people get their affairs in order? It also made me think about when we pull people over, why do they got to go to jail right now? You can't put a tracking device on their car, a tracking device on them and go, okay, you got 48 to 72 hours to pay your fine. But the jail's a whole business. It's a whole business of itself. Yeah. Remember when Trump got indicted, there was a big question of whether or not he had to go in cuffs and then go down to the jail. He still had to go down to the jail for booking. And then later he would say in a newsletter he was abused in jail. But here's the question. Why does Donald Trump need to go to the jail to be booked? Because it's a money operation. The guy doing your fingerprints, the woman taking your picture, the guy processing, the nurse taking your vitals, every one of them has a job and they're making money by you going to jail. And what is that? That's Geo Group. That's the name of it, geogroup.org.
Geo Group. Yep, Geo Group.
Civic Core as well.
Publicly traded company on the stock market that is a private prison industry where they funnel children and adults into these facilities. I got arrested in the Netherlands, okay, in Utrecht for shoplifting, because I am a piece of shit. I like to have fun. I like to cause trouble. I don't like to pay full price for things that were made by sweatshop laborers in Bangladesh. I tend to just take whatever I like. So I got in trouble. I was on the run in this small little village. The cops finally got me. And you know what they said? They said, "Do we need to put you in handcuffs?" I said, "No, I'll come with you. No problem.
Right.
Optional."
That's what I'm trying to get across. So now that I finally got a new studio and I'm got moved and everything, now I can start to do it. I believe in this thing called digital detainment. Cops come up to you. Hey, you don't have to violate your Fourth Amendment. You don't have to violate your Fifth Amendment. But if you agree to stay on camera and not to be violent, we're not going to touch you. Can you agree to that so that we don't have to touch you? That's it.
Yeah.
Now from
love
there, everything that you do, the judge is going to see. I'm not going to touch you, bro. You want to run? Boom. You get shot with a silly putty ball that sticks to your clothes, and there's a tracking device in it.
I like
You
that.
mean you could let him run off? Yes, you could. There's
Yeah.
a woman. She won't give her license. I just covered this video the other day. She won't give her license, her registration, proof of ID, or proof of registration. Okay, fine. Put a tracking device on the inside well of your car. No problem. I'm going to send these other guys homes. We got a drone in the air. Wherever you go, you're going to park. Your car's going to be impounded. If you park in a garage, the tow truck will park in front of your garage so you can't get out. You are going to have to give us your documents. If you don't, I'm not going to spend 12 guys here. The money and salary for 12 guys to break your window, tase you, cuff you, take you to jail. I got a tracking device on your car. The only person who's going to be paid tonight is me, because I'm going to follow you wherever you go with that tracking device. If you don't comply, they're going to impound your car, because she hadn't committed a crime. Her driver's license was suspended. They got that from the license plate. That's the 2020 case of Glover, Kansas versus Glover. In case your audience doesn't know this, if your license is suspended or revoked and your car is registered in your name, the 2020 case of Kansas versus Glover says that if the police are using a plate reader, which they have them in their cars, it's a camera that just runs every plate around them. It comes back and it says, hey, Chille de Castro's car right there, he's got a revoked suspended license. Well, then Chris Jeffries has borrowed my car. He goes in to get in my van. They pull him over. Why do they pull him over? They have reasonable suspicion that this could be Chille de Castro, and he has a revoked license. So if your license is revoked or suspended and your car is in your name, don't be loaning your car to your dad. Don't be loaning your car to your best friend. It's a Supreme Court case. The Supreme Court said a bunch of unelected black robe tyrants who go to Harvard and Yale and Princeton, you have nothing in common with them. They never get pulled over, ever. They've never been through a pullover. They've never had their brother, cousin, sister thrown to the ground, put in torture cuffs. The big one right now is the cops are doing. They're taking both of their hands, they're sticking on the back of your head and pushing your face into the ground. That's what they're doing in America right now, everywhere. So I hate to get off track, but so now you know, if your license is suspended or revoked and your car is registered in your name, your car is now a lure for police. So the judge then sentenced me to jail for 6 months. They immediately take me from the courtroom to the jail. You don't have your phone, so you have no phone numbers. Who are you going to call? You don't know. You can't reach anybody. I've written a thesis called Segregation Over Incarceration. I wrote it in jail, 400 pages. And what it says is we need to create tiny little mini cities, little tiny places, a mile square that has a store in it, everything else, that if you have to be detained, a DV, for example, he pushed me. Oh, she smacked me. Now they have to be separated. Instead of taking you to a jail, instead of going through a strip search and all that garbage, we take you to one of these mini cities. There's no strip search. There's no nothing. There's a little turnbuckle entrance. You enter into it. There's an apartment complex that has your name on it. It's got your key, got your fob. There's a bed in there for you. And now you're segregated, because you have to be segregated during a domestic violence incident, because we don't want you to go back and kill her later, or him or her kill him. And so we segregate you from society, but that's not incarcerated. You still got your phone. You can still call your people. You want to blow her up on sex? I don't recommend you blow her up on text message, because we're going to download an app to your phone that's going to track what you do while you're in here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's another thing.
We just live in a society where Geo Group and Civic Corps has created such a financial gain by locking people up with the torture cuffs, by putting them in dungeons, that they're unwilling to change anything, because the ankle monitor, right? The ankle monitor, that's an entire multi-billion-dollar industry. Why would you want to put an Apple AirTag on someone's wrist? I got a guy making billions by putting the ankle monitor on, and then there's a process to it. You got to pay $15 a day, or it's $25 a day to have the ankle monitor on. It's a scam. It's an ultimate scam, but we refuse to change anything. So I started off by trying to explain to you my sleeping style is still effed up because of the 12-hour shifts of the different pigs who would come on. And let me just tell you something, Chris, this is really hard to say, but it's true. 1 out of 5 of those jail guards were just people making money. They just were there to make money. They didn't want to hem you up. They didn't want to torture you. They didn't want to hit you with sticks. They didn't want to tase you. Didn't want to put you in the hole. They just wanted to put their 12 hours in, make their $1,000 for the day, because they make about $1,000 a day, and then they just want to go home.
Would you say 1 out of 5?
20%.
That's pretty low. That means the other one, that they're just into torture.
Oh, the other 4 out of 5 are evil fucking demons, bro. I mean,
they're like, I'll do it for free. Just let me in here. I want to torture people.
Evil sucking pieces of mother garbage. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I can't even say the words I want to say, but they're just scum. Yeah. And it's the worst. And so, just so you know, I've got a half a dozen of those guys who we've recorded a bunch of sessions with already. That really? Here's the gift and the curse. I'm pretty famous, Chris. Like, if I go out into the world, people go, you're that guy from Delete Laws. No matter where I go, what city, what state, I go to a game, I go to a grocery store, I go to a restaurant, people come up and say, hey man, I want to shake your hand. Thank you for what you're doing. Right. So when I went to jail, half the guys in jail already knew who I was. Half the jail guards already knew who I was. So it was a gift for me to be known, because there was a couple times where, you know, it was hairy for me, and my Ennas in jail. There was one guy who wanted to have a fight with me, and one of my other, because I can't say any words, so I call him my Ennas. Yeah, I know. So so this one black guy wanted to like fight me, and one of my Ennas stepped up and said, yo, that's Delete Laws, bro. You need to get off him. And then someone else said, who wants to fight Delete Laws? I'll fight him right now. And these are black guys. And so we had I said, you guys know I'm branded racist online. And they're like, we'll take our racist friend anytime we can get him. because the guards and I, the conversations I had with the guards, so when you're a known person, what happens is people kind of migrate to you because they want to understand what you are. And so the guards would migrate over to me, and pretty soon we'd be having this conversation, right? And so I would stand up for everybody in the jail with the guards, because I already knew I'm either a target or I'm their best friend. The guard that comes in either really admires me or wants to throw me in the hole. So, you know, fudge it. I'm just gonna have it out. So one time, it is so weird. I'm gonna say it.
Come on, out with it.
The racism in jail is disgusting. If I wasn't
to be expected, yeah.
If I wasn't who I am, the racism of the blacks, of the Mexicans, was so, you can't really be a white racist in jail. You're a fraction of the population. You know, I mean, maybe in prison where there's the Aryan Brotherhood and stuff like that, but in jail, it's, 20% are white. Not even, 15% are white. The rest are black and brown. And when it was an overtly Mexican population in the pod that I was in, it was La Raza, we're in charge. We're the race in charge. And when it was a mostly black population in the pod, I was in 4 different pods. And I experienced 2 out of the 4 pods. I experienced Mexican racism in one and black racism in the other. And in one of the pods, I experienced direct racism towards me from the black guys. Yeah. And I was really glad that group of blacks who were racist against me, that they eventually were moved to other pods or got released, because then the next group of black guys that came in there one of them was like 6'4", like 260, giant guy. And he walked in right away and said, "Delete laws." Like, as he was walking to his bunk, as he was coming in with his bag, guys over his shoulder, there's 4 other guys, they're carrying their pillowcases, and this huge dude, and everybody looks at the new people because we know that we have to now sit at MedPass, you have to sit down on your steel bunk. And so new people means you have to sit there while everybody gets their meds. So every time new people come in, we're like, oh man, new people, right? So we all watch the new people come in, and this dude was like, "Delete laws is in here, man. I've been watching your videos, dude."
That's so fucking cool,
whole
dude.
room. So that was the same guy, though. So let me give you the racist part, and then I'll give you the positive part. So,
All right.
So I'm sitting down. We have lunch. Lunch is served at 11 a.m. No, I'm sorry. It's 3 a.m. for breakfast. Lunch is served at 9 a.m. So that's when lunch is served. So we eat lunch from 9 to 9:30 a.m. And not even that. You got about 5 minutes to eat and back to your bunk. So then we go to dinner. Dinner served at 3. And then after you have dinner, you have 15 minutes to eat, back to your bunk by 3:30. I mean, you get to get up, sit at the tables, get back down to the. So then at 3:30 p.m., we're all in our beds, and the jail guard, one of the a-holes, he goes, "All right, read, write, or sleep." So read, write, or sleep is a very common term in jail. That means you can read, you can write, or you can sleep. But you cannot have a conversation with Chris. If you're my bunkmate, I'm like, "Hey, man, do you want a fruit roll up?" Can't do that. Can't have any conversation at all. If you do, then you get locked to your bed for 24 hours.
Jesus Christ.
So at 3:30 in the afternoon, though, after we've had our dinner, the guys are, everybody's awake now at this point. So there's a lot of energy in the room. So the guard's like, "Read, write, or sleep." And so I go, "Why?" Ooh, you don't question the guards, boy. So I say, "Why?" And he goes, "What?" And I said, "It's 3:30 in the afternoon, guard." I said, "Why do we need to read, write, or sleep right now? This is not standard protocol. We usually go back to our bunks. We can talk for an hour or two, and then we get free time at 8 o'clock. And from 3 to 7, you're stuck in your bed. You can't get out of your bed. You have to sit in your bed for those 4 hours. You can't leave your bunk unless you have to go to the bathroom and you go back to your bunk." So everybody's going to the bathroom a lot. So anyway, I say to the guard, "Why?" And then the guard gets up, walks over to my bunk, which is in the back. And he's standing there. He's like, "Yo, listen, I said read, write, or sleep. If you want to read, write, or sleep, that's what you can do. But I don't expect a lot of back talk." And I said, "Well, okay. Obviously, I can't have a conversation with you. I don't want to go to the hole for back talking because disrespect is a level 2 offense and you get sent to the hole. So, okay, you want me to read, write, or sleep? I'll read, write, or sleep." He goes, "Well, what?" I said, No. I said, "Listen, is this a conversation? Because if this is a conversation, I'll have it with you. But you just said read, write, or sleep. If that's what you want me to do and I'm not allowed to talk to you, I'll follow your rules. What can I do here?" He goes, "You're not going to the hole. Tell me what you want to say." I said, "Are you sure? Everybody here can hear it, right?" All the guys around me are black. Every bed around me is a black guy. Okay. So he goes, "No, tell me what you're going to say." I said, "Listen, it's 3:30 in the afternoon. There's no reason why full-grown men have to be told to read, write, or sleep at 3:30 in the afternoon. If we get too loud, I understand that. But you didn't do that. You went from us eating to read, write, or sleep right now. We can't talk at all. Why is that?" He said, "Because I said so." "Oh," I said, "so this is a despotic system." And he goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Despotism. There's several systems of governance. There's an aristocracy. There's a democratic. There is a monarchist government. There's all different kinds of governments. But one of those governments is called a despotic government. And in a despotic government, what happens is the will of the law is based on the whim of the ruler. So you, my friend, are a despotic government representative. This is at your caprice. This is at your whimsical. You just have decided we get to read, write, or sleep." And he goes, now I've kind of painted him in a color of being a piece of shit. And so he's like, no. I didn't say it's at my whim. I'm just saying read, write, or sleep because that's part of the thing. I said, no. I said, out of the 10 million jobs you could have chosen in the world, you chose this one. So you could tell people what to do whenever you whimsically felt like it. So this back and forth continues for a while. It's a 15-minute. And all the while I'm going, all the while I'm saying to the guard, so he says something. And then listen, I have trained jujitsu MMA for 25 years, right? I mean, I've spent thousands of hours on the mat, you know? So then he says, then he says something like, um, he goes, "You're the guy that holds your phone up and puts your phone in cops' faces." He said, "I'd smack that phone right out of your hand." I said, "You'd smack the phone out of my hand with your badge and gun on. You wouldn't do it without that badge and gun on, would you?" And he goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "It would take me about 15 seconds to tap you out, bro." It was, "Oh, you're threatening me?" I said, "Oh, there it is. I'm going to the hole. There it is. You threatened to smack the phone out of my hand. I told you that I'd tap you out, and now I'm threatening you. There it is. You've manipulated me to put me in a hole." Then he decides to start with his hood talk. "I'm just saying, homie, I'll smack that phone out your hand. You put that phone in my face, homeboy." He went from white jail guard, who is a black guy, to the hood black man, just like that. It happened as soon as I walloped him and I told him he was a despotic government representative, that he was a tyrant, that he just wanted to put me in the hole, he immediately switched to gangster hood lingo. I can't even do, "Yo, cuz, I'll tell you what, cuz, I'm gonna tell you what, cuz,
Partner.
cuz, I'll tell you, cuz, listen, Anna, I told you, Anna, don't you even think about doing something like that, Anna." Okay, so what happens? And this is the strangest thing I've ever seen. The three black guys around me take his side.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote it in my book. I wrote about it.
Jesus
I
Christ.
was a little nervous to actually to say it out loud, because, you know, you can go online and say Chille de Castro racist and you'll find all
Sure.
these things, how racist I am, even though there's not a single person who's ever said I've been racist to them. But that's the truth. They turned against me immediately as soon as he went into this kind of urban hood slang, and they turned against me immediately. And I was
Yeah.
like, I immediately looked at them and I said, "You fucking racists."
You traitor
I
motherfuckers.
said, "I'm sitting here standing up for your right to speak out loud, your First Amendment right to speech. And you're going to turn on me because he starts talking like he's from the hood." And
I mean,
they turned against me.
how many of these guys in this can have that Stockholm syndrome where they still identify with the guards, like they think they're friends or something, or like, because they are cut from the same cloth. They got a lot of these criminal assholes are the same as some of these jail guards, and cops are fucking criminals in uniform.
Yeah,
It's
there's a lot. I
crazy.
mean, I think that, you know, so I don't want to name any of the guards because there's a few guards who are working with me right now on this book. And I don't want to list anybody's names because, I mean, I literally have 6 guys, 1 girl, 5 guys, 1 girl who are talking to me, that we're having phone conversations that I'm recording so that I can expose what's happening in the jail. And so I don't want to list anybody's names, but even the guard, I don't even want to give night or day shift, but there was a guard in there who one time I took a cinnamon roll. That is a water bottle, obviously. I took a cinnamon roll and I traded a guy a haircut for a cinnamon roll. And it was after we were locked down to our beds, because they lock you down for like 18 hours a day, 15 hours a day minimum. And so I told him I'd pay him with a cinnamon roll if he cut my hair for me. And so he did. And then we got locked down. You get locked down for anything. If 2 guys have an argument in the bathroom, everybody in the pod is locked down to their bed. So anyway, I had the cinnamon roll for him. He was like, "Yo, we got that cinnamon roll." And he's like 6 beds away. I grabbed the cinnamon roll, chucked that thing across the pod. By the way, it wasn't even close. I missed by like 6 beds. And the guard saw me do it.
Uh-oh.
Now, just so you know, if you throw something across the room in jail, you're going to the hole. The hole is a 6 by 8 foot room with 2 beds in the back that are wooden beds like this. The ceiling is 7 feet tall. So you're in 6 by 8 by 7 feet. You're in a room this big. It drives you literally mentally crazy. There's nothing you can do about it. It'll drive you crazy. And you're locked down for 23 hours a day. You get out for 1 hour a day, if the full hour.
Mm.
So I threw that cinnamon roll across the room. And then I look over, and one of the orderlies, there's 2 guys who wear orange the orange shoots instead of the blues. And I look over at the orange guy and he's going like this. And I'm like, "Oh shit, do you see that?" And he goes, "Yeah." I look over at the guard and he's going like this. And I said, "I'm sorry, man." And he goes, Why? You know, truth be told though, he could have said, "We got movement. and then they send in 6 guys
Right.
and they put me in the
Yeah.
hole just like that. So is it Stockholm syndrome to be grateful to him for not putting me in the hole?
No, 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 no. You're working within the boundaries of what you know to be expected. Well, what could be the worst and what could be the best? You know what the best case, worst case scenario is of your situation. And that being said, you were in survival mode.
Yeah,
Fuck it.
I was, and this guard, so he was he ex-military. He did like 8 years or 12 years in the military. When you come out, you're just used to being, following orders. So he got told to go over, and the militarization of police and jail guards in our country is despicable because we're a domesticated, free American society, and people are not going to die if I throw a cinnamon roll. They're not, right? So then so first of all, the judge sentenced me to jail from the courthouse, so I don't have a chance to get any of my affairs in order. $20,000.
It's been going on and off all day, but we're good to go. We're back on.
The internet where you are.
Yeah, it's all tricky, but that's fine. We're back on live.
So I'm sorry, it's just hard. So,
bro, I understand what it's like being on the inside. I know what it's like when they dehumanize you. I've been poor my whole life. I've also been in and out of trouble with the law for various things, mostly weed and shoplifting and shit. Right? But the over-the-top violent tendencies of people in those positions is shocking. It's shocking.
Oh yeah. There was so that's the other thing is they take you if you have to go to the hole for whatever reason, they take you from the pod to the hole in torture cuffs. They all come in all hopped up like they're gonna fight somebody or something. But the truth is that I didn't see anybody try to fight any guards. I didn't see any of that. There is some stuff I'm holding back because it's in my federal civil rights lawsuit.
Sure.
But there's some stuff that happened in that jail that has to be exposed. So I'm going to expose.
Bro, one of these days you're going to hit the lawsuit lottery and you'll be able to start an organization that really can do amazing shit.
Right.
I think
go ahead.
But I just don't want that to be under the duress of like the stress that you've already been through. But hopefully that happens at some point.
Well, I think Brandon Bourke, I think the wrongful arrest, I think the DA maliciously prosecuting me and saying he didn't step back when it's on video that I did. I think that lawsuit is going to bear fruit. And a lot of people say, oh, you've lost all your lawsuits. I was lawsuits, but he never wins. My lawsuits are still ongoing.
Wait.
Yeah, dropped the lawsuit.